Welcome back. It's always a good thing to be able to do this once a week. My problem is today that for some reason my camera's freezing and I can't figure it out, but I hope the audio will keep going. So here we are, Breakthrough Pathways. You're here. I expect you've been here before. My goodness, we're on number 39. I can't believe it as to how long we've been going here. But I've got to hit a reset button for you and say Breakthrough Pathways is built on this book. This is the foundational book that we have built, and I see that the camera froze, but we've built this to help you solve a key problem in the life of churches today. One of the key problems is pastors are saying, I can't raise up leaders. I can't get volunteers. And it's as if they wanted to go to the Costco of Christian leadership and go in there and say, I want a really good one, so I'll get the second best and, package it up, put it in the cart, take it home, and you try it out and it doesn't work. So you fire the guy or you set him aside, and then you go back to Costco and say, can I get my money back on this because I need the upgrade? No, this is nonsense. Of course, it doesn't work that way. What has to happen is we've got to work with the material that God gives us to raise up leaders. And I'm going to tell you, it takes longer than you might think. It took Jesus 3 years to get the apostles to where they are in the story that we're going to get to today in lesson 39. And they're not very far, but they did make the job happen over time. So our difficulty is that we have to raise people up. And this is built to take very ordinary people with ordinary baby steps and move them forward. And I want you to get the book. If you really can't afford whatever it is, $20 for the book, get in touch with me. I will get you a PDF file of the thing because I can. And I want to make sure that you have no excuse to not use this system and make it work. Now, when you get there, that's rung one on the ladder. That's really down at the bottom. There are lots of other things. This is not everything about Christian leadership, of course. But this is what we're really focusing on here today. We've got, and we're into this chapter where the clip is. It's the Training of the 12, a book written in 1870, published in 1870. I don't know when it was written, by A.B. Bruce, and it's a classic. In fact, most pastor types, and maybe you're a pastor type, you've heard of it. Maybe you were assigned to read it, looked at it, and you said, oh man, that's an awfully big book. And honestly, in today's terms, it's probably not written in a vocabulary and in sentence structure that will strike home. A little later on today, I'm going to actually have official voice read you just a few paragraphs from the remake that we've done to remake that book. And I hope it'll be really helpful for you and excite you to the possibility of getting the book when we get it done. Not done yet. We got to get through all these lessons first because I'm working on them 1 week at a time. And, this isn't a full-time job for me. I got lots of other things to do as well. So this is where we are at moving forward, trying to help you develop leaders one step at a time. If you're not demonstrating a followership of Jesus, why would others? Now, if you've been in your church for a hypothetical 4 years, just hypothetically, and you've preached 50 times a year, and just hypothetically, that would be that in 4 years, you've preached 800 times. And you're still putting in all this time preparing sermons, and you haven't raised up leaders. Well, there's something wrong, and I don't think it's your fault. Well, it might be your fault if you know, but it's not your fault if you don't know. What did Jesus do to raise up leaders? That's what we learn from the training of the 12. And that's what I'm trying to get you to see and understand. Each lesson is, roughly speaking, half an hour long. We're on 39. If we make that 40, that's 20 hours of your life. Some of you are spending 20 hours of your life working on your sermons. And I say, stop it. That's not what Jesus did. There's no evidence that he prepared sermons. Maybe he did. But there's no evidence that he did. And if he did, his sermons are always interrupted with the exception of the Sermon on the Mount. There's all kinds of interruptions, and we're going into a place today in chapter 39 where it's in the upper room, and Jesus is speaking with his disciples and giving them some heavy thinking that they must do. And on 4 occasions, they interrupt him and say, I don't get it. So, Jesus handpicked them. One of them is already blown out in John chapter 13. The others are still saying, I'm not sure I get this. And it shouldn't surprise you that it takes a little while to raise people up, but you've got to invest the way Jesus invested to get the leadership scope that you want to get out of your church. So let's get started and look at this section, which comes in, let's see if I can get the right thing here. I'm on the roll. I forgot to take it back to the beginning. Okay, so here we are at the farewell event in Jesus' life. Starts in John 13 at the end of the chapter and then goes to John 14 and gives us really good evidence about how to treat your mentees as a mentor, how to raise up in the framework of what Jesus says, your children. He calls them my little children. That sounds a bit pejorative today, so I'm not sure that's the best phraseology. And he speaks to them as a father to a child, but about the end of his life on earth. And in this section, he doesn't dwell on the resurrection. He promises he'll be back, but it does make a huge difference in their lives as he trains them and moves with them. So we'll start off with him. I hope that you've got your Bible open in front of you. And I don't go through the details of this because I assume you know. You know that Peter says, I'll go with you to death. And Jesus says, no, you'll deny me 3 times. Jesus knew what Peter was made of, but he still didn't cancel his subscription. He worked with him as he was. Peter demonstrated that his overconfidence was really revealing how weak he was. But he improved and he got better after the resurrection. So Jesus is speaking to the disciples, and particularly Peter, the one who always spoke up first. And he needed the correction that was in this lesson, finding out that he was not as strong as he thought he was. And the prediction that Jesus made was followed up just immediately. The next day, Peter had already fulfilled it. He couldn't even remember one day what Jesus said was going to happen to him. But it transformed Peter to the place where you see by the end of his life, when he writes his letters, you see that his kind of arrogance is not there anymore. He's a gentle, humble spirit teaching us how to be humble. We move on to the second person. There's 4 of them in this section that have questions. Thomas was the fun one, as far as I'm concerned. He takes kind of the dark view of the situation, and he wants reasons that go beyond what really is reasonable. Now, this is where I took a section of this just because I could. And this is the chapter, and I just took a few paragraphs. It takes about 2 minutes to read these paragraphs for you. This is not what A.B. Bruce wrote, but it's the essence, sentence by sentence, of what A.B. Bruce wrote. And it will really help you grasp what this book is going to be like. It might be 2 or 3 sections when we get the book published. I don't know how many pages it's going to be. I don't want to go more than 200 pages in a book. So you buy the first one, and then you can buy the second one if you think it's worth doing. But I want to give you this sense of what it's like in this book to follow through and read it. So if you give me a moment here, I've got to shut my mic off and then turn on this video, and I hope it'll all work.
This response was typical of Thomas, based on what John tells us about him. While practical, Peter asked Jesus where he was going because he wanted to follow. Thomas didn't think such a question was worth asking. This didn't mean Thomas didn't care. He would have liked to know where his Lord was going. If possible, he would have been as ready as Peter to keep Jesus company. Danger wouldn't stop him. He had once said, "Let us go, that we may die with him." And he could honestly say it again. Though gloomy, he wasn't selfish or cowardly. But just as before, when Jesus decided to go from Perea to Judea to visit the family in Bethany, Thomas took the darkest view of the situation. Now he was giving in to a hopeless, sad mood. The thought of the master's departure made him so sad that he had no desire to ask questions about why or where. He accepted ignorance as unavoidable fate. Where? I don't know. Who can tell? The future is dark. This Father's house, you mentioned, where in the universe could it be? Does such a place really exist at all? Even Thomas's question, "How can we know the way?" wasn't really a question. It was more of an excuse for not asking questions. He wasn't demanding information. Instead, he was gently complaining that Jesus expected his disciples to already know these things. He wasn't expressing a desire for knowledge, but making an excuse for his ignorance. For now, the gloomy disciple felt hopeless about knowing either the destination or the way. Therefore, he wasn't curious and had no energy. Far from seeking light, he almost wanted to make the darkness seem worse. Like Jonah when he was angry and complained, Thomas in his sadness took pleasure in gloom. He didn't eagerly wait for dawn. He preferred the night because it matched his mood.
So there you have A.B. Bruce's take on just what was happening in Thomas's personality. I don't know that he's entirely right, but I do know that it's well worth thinking through what he said, and I hope it's well worth thinking through what I'm saying here. You will run into people in your life when you're trying to train up your 12, 2, 3, or 4, one at a time. You'll find people who are gloomy. That doesn't mean they're entirely negative. It just means that they come at life from a different perspective that may be a little tedious for you to deal with, but it's still worth dealing with these people because they might become really solid people in the life of your ministry. I had a deacon 45 years ago. Was a young man who was maybe the gloomiest man that I ever knew, but he sincerely loved the Lord and wanted to follow him. And he had some struggles through his life. He died about a year ago, and I was at his funeral, and it was amazing how many people were at the funeral that recognized that he had made a positive difference in their life. He didn't slow down, and he pushed himself really hard and maybe too hard, and that was difficult on his wife. But he really cared, and over time, he made a huge difference, even though he had a somewhat gloomy personality. So don't beat up on the guy with a gloomy personality, like Thomas. And maybe Bruce has something to say that you can consider in the Thomas in your life. No, what am I doing? No, I don't want to exit. I have to fix that, I guess. So we'll move on to understand how Jesus is saying to these guys, all 11 of them that are left in the room, I am way, truth, and life. I am the true way for life. If you want to understand it that way, I'm the only path to the Father. That's the exclusive claim of Jesus Christ, and I believe it to be true. And I don't understand all the other sincere people, world religions, as to why, if they don't know Jesus, I don't get it all. I know that it's just my job to do my best to get the message out and to help you get the message out to these people. Jesus is providing life, the way, the truth. He has the fullness of grace and truth in his life and ministry. There goes my camera again. Over and over again, it's quitting on me. Just ignore that. It doesn't take a whole lot of knowledge to be saved. The disciples themselves had an incomplete understanding. Some people are saved with minimal knowledge but maximum commitment. True disciples desire to grow and know more, and they keep on working at it, and they don't say, there, I got my ticket punched out, I'm good to go. Now I don't have to do anything because I've got this card in my back pocket. No, no. Uh, Sincere seekers are accepted by the Lord. And these disciples, he dealt with them so patiently, in spite of the fact they didn't get it all the time. We have in Luke, jumping out of uh, John's gospel for a moment, we have in the last chapter of Luke where Jesus meets with the two disciples on the way to Emmaus. We don't know if one of them was the 12. We know the other one wasn't of the 12. And Jesus is saying, "Duh, how come it took you so long? What, don't you get this?" And he individually, the three of them on the road together, Jesus explained these things to him, and they didn't get it until at the end of the day, Jesus pretended he was going to go on, and they said, "No, stay with us." He built a relationship with them in that one afternoon. And when he broke bread with them, then their eyes were open. Uh, was it just the previous day that the Lord's Supper was instituted? So I don't know if they knew about that or how that worked. But what I do know is that Jesus needed to re-explain to people what was happening and what was going on in terms of the resurrection. So now we move on to Philip. Philip really wanted something tangible. He wanted to see God physically. He doesn't see Jesus and the Father. Jesus says, "I am the Father are one. You know me, you know the Father." And his years with Jesus, it still was not comprehensible to him. But Jesus promises that the Paraclete, the Comforter, the Spirit of truth, will bring full understanding over time. Jesus is the sunlight of theology. You can't understand God at all without understanding Jesus, because he's the way. And, you know, and it's difficult sometimes to see everything. I like the illustration of thinking about the stars in the sky. When I was a kid, I loved looking up at the stars. And my bigger siblings, my older siblings, said, "Do you see the Big Dipper?" I couldn't figure it out. I eventually figured out where the Big Dipper was, and then I couldn't figure out where the Little Dipper was. And, they've got all these things. I look at these things, Orion and these things that I see that you got 3 or 4 points of light, and they say I don't get it. I didn't get it then. I don't get it now, but I do get a starry night. And I understand the big picture. And I think that's a great paradigm for all that we need to understand about Jesus. You can't understand all of the ins and outs. It's, if we think of our life, our capacity is like a line that goes from here to here. It's not infinite. God's line is infinitely wide. And he has to pour all of his stuff, all of his information. Come on, video. Come on back for me. I want to, there, right now. Boom, there we go. Okay. So God's got that infinite line, and then he's pouring into our skinny little lines so very much. And we can understand so much about him. And Jesus, we understand all we need to understand about God the Father. And the Holy Spirit will guide us into that. God's wisdom is like milk for babies. It works. If you see Christ in trueness, you really understand God. Now, I'm going to argue that in church life today, when we spend so much time on things that Jesus didn't spend time on, and using methodologies that he didn't emphasize, we are putting ourselves into poverty. Sometimes we make out like God is a great distant person, and it's true that God is way above. We can think of him as the very high God. But then this loving relationship that Jesus has with us is the near God, the very nigh. Near. So you've got high, nigh. The Father represents definite truth, but it is very few people can grasp the totality of the Trinity. I certainly don't. I probably wrote a paper on it and got a C in Bible college, and I still don't fully grasp. I believe, I have no doubt about that God is in three persons, but I can't explain it and come up with all the vocabulary. No, I'm not. I just try to go on here and get to where we need to be. And then Judas, the other Judas, not Iscariot, sometimes known as Thaddeus, Labius is another name. He is wondering about why is it that you're going to reveal yourself to us, but not to the whole world. And he misunderstood the nature of spiritual presence. The gospel is available universally, but it's not accessible to those who won't start by taking this first steps toward him. It's only the pure in heart who see God. Now, Jesus promises in comforting these disciples, because he is leading them, he promises them his peace, my peace, not just peace in general, but his peace I give you. And that's based on his own experience, and they have seen him in troubled times, but in fundamentally peaceful times as well in their life. And he's teaching that they can have his peace to guard against the fears, the worries, the difficulties of life. And the disciples inherit this promise from Jesus himself. Now Jesus gets up and says, okay, it's time to go. He's ready to meet the enemy. There's the tone at the end of John 14 picks up from the tender style to the more disciplined, moving forward style. But I can picture this as, okay, they get up from reclining at the tables, don't know that this is true. But they stand up, and as they get their garments ready to go, Jesus says, a few more things. And he moves into John 15 and gives some of the great teachings that move on further, that drill down even deeper. He's preparing his disciples for their future responsibility and the knowledge base that they're going to need going forward. So what do we make of all this? And how does it apply to us in our world? Well, we must be people who are ready to give comfort in season. It isn't always time to hammer down. Even when they don't understand, they're willful. It's time for us to show warmth and love and comfort in due season. We must expect that there's going to be incomplete understanding in the people we're trying to lead. Don't blow them away. Give them another chance. You were given another chance. So many people and so many great leaders in Christian ministry were fired the first couple of times they tried to work in Christian ministry, probably because, like Peter, they were too arrogant, thinking they knew it all. And I'm sure that most of us, when we're young, have a dose of that problem. But getting another degree is not going to help. If you got a job offered to you, and somebody's saying, yeah, well, if you had your doctorate, we'd invite you to be a pastor of our church, then yeah, go get the doctorate. But you don't need more education. Not like education is bad, and I'm not against it, but chasing more knowledge won't give you more personal peace, won't give you more competence, it won't give you more understanding. It probably will raise more questions than it supplies answer. The essence of it all is to trust in Jesus. My mother's favorite hymn is trust and obey, for there's no other way to be happy in Jesus. And I appreciate it so much that I had loving parents who showed me the way, took me to church. Were they perfect? Of course not. But they were loving, careful parents who gave me so much that I have still, in all these many decades since I moved out, more than 6 decades since I moved out from under their direct care. And, I didn't get it all right all the time, still don't. But I appreciate so much the foundation that they gave me. Trusting Jesus is the essence of it all. And so what? So what does all this mean? For you, for me, and for everybody else, the battle is not with the other guy. The battle is not with the politicians. Oh, it frustrates me so much when people who ought to be sticking to their knitting, as one of my mentors used to say, They get involved in politics. Not that it's wrong for Christians to get involved in politics. That's not what I'm saying. But the thing that stirs them most is to have an enemy. And some even will want to find an enemy with somebody of the other theology. I can't sort out the other guy's theology. I don't want to get in a battle. I want to answer all the questions that I possibly can whenever I can for people, but I don't mind saying I don't know. Everything is above my pay grade. And so I just don't know, and I'm sure that you don't either. So I want to encourage you to make sure that as you move through your life and that you follow Jesus and that you pick up where A.B. Bruce was living in. I've other books as well. There are a couple of other classics, and I'm reworking through some, and I'm trying to figure this out, but all from the perspective of something that will help so that I know where the next rung on the ladder is. I think you should start here. I hope you'll get this book. I hope that you'll pass on to others this book and that you will get engaged with it. My co-author, Richard Fleming, was just telling me this week that the men in his men's ministry in his church, he's just a guy in the church. But the leader of his men's ministry gave him a copy of this, and when the guy went on vacation, he came back and said what a blessing this book was for him. I laughed. Richard said, he was kind of surprised. I think I was blessed. I said, Richard, it's a really good book. It's a famous book, yeah. And it may never become a famous book, but it's really good. And I want you, and everybody that I've given it to has said that same thing. And I want you to get it as well. It's a work in progress. We're fixing some things in it. It'll be better as we go. And there is behind the scenes in the Breakthrough Pathway system a whole array of things that we're working on. And by God's grace, we'll get them developed, including this finishing up the training of the 12. And let me apologize to you about the camera thing. I had no idea what's different today, even last week. It is what it is. I want you to pass it on to others and be blessed. May the peace of God rule in your heart.